Jesus warned us this day would come, and the signs he gave us are now unfolding before our very eyes. Wars that stretch across continents. Nations rising against nations. Global unrest and division so deep that even families are torn apart. Earthquakes, famines, pestilence, not scattered randomly through history, but all converging at once. For centuries, believers have whispered, the end must be near. But never before have we seen every warning light flash on the dashboard of time, simultaneously. And yet, the words of Jesus cut deeper than every headline. He told his disciples, "When you see these things begin to take place, lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." So here's the question. If Jesus himself gave us proof that the rapture is close, would you be ready? Would you be watching, alert, prepared? Or would you be caught unaware, living as though tomorrow was guaranteed? This isn't a message of fear. It's a wake-up call. The return of Christ is not an obscure theory or a fringe belief. It is the single most anticipated promise in the Word of God. And Jesus didn't just hint at it. He gave us clear signs to recognize when the hour was close. Signs that are screaming at us right now. 2,000 years ago, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives overlooking Jerusalem. His disciples leaned in, asking the question we're still asking today. What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Jesus' answer wasn't vague. He painted a picture so clear, it still shakes us today. He spoke of deception spreading like wildfire. He spoke of wars and rumors of wars, kingdoms collapsing, and nations in turmoil. He warned of famines and pestilence, of earthquakes in diverse places. And then he said, "These were only the beginning of sorrows." In Luke 21, his words cut even deeper. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish, men fainting with fear of what is coming on the world. These weren't abstract prophecies. They were a checklist of the exact world we now live in. But here's the detail most believers miss. Jesus tied his return to a mindset. Not an obsession with dates, not a secret calculation, but a posture of watching for the season. He said, "No one knows the day or the hour." But in the same breath, he rebuked the servant who said in his heart, "My master delays his coming." To believe that Christ is far off is not just naive. Jesus called it wicked. And here lies the forgotten warning. It's not enough to agree the rapture will happen someday. The true test is whether you believe it could happen at any moment. That single shift, from delay to imminence, separates those who are prepared from those who will be blindsided. And this is the ultimate proof. Not speculation, not man's interpretation, but Jesus' own words. He told us deception would multiply. He told us fear would grip nations. He told us the world would dismiss his coming as delayed. And then he told us, "When you see these things begin, look up." The world says everything is falling apart. But Jesus said, "When you see this, know that everything is falling into place." Of all the signs Jesus gave, one stands out like a blazing torch in the darkness. It is the parable of the fig tree. In Matthew 24, verse 32, Jesus said, "Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs become tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away." For centuries, this prophecy puzzled scholars. What was the fig tree? Why did Jesus tie his return to its budding? Then came the year 1948. In one moment of history, the prophecy took on flesh and blood. After nearly 2,000 years of exile, the Jewish people returned to their ancient homeland. Against every odd, Israel was reborn in a single day. Isaiah had once declared, "Can a nation be born in a day?" And in May of 1948, that question became reality. The barren tree put forth leaves. The fig tree came back to life. And with it, the prophetic clock began ticking. This is not man's interpretation. It is living proof that Jesus' words are trustworthy. He said, "When you see this happen, know that it is near, even at the doors." And here lies the power of the fig tree prophecy. It isn't abstract. It is visible, tangible, measurable. We can point to the calendar, to the headlines, and to the very existence of modern Israel and say, this is what Jesus spoke of. But then comes the question, what did he mean by, this generation will not pass away? Entire debates have erupted around it. Does a generation mean 40 years? 70? 100? Does it mean the people who witnessed 1948 will still be alive when these events unfold? Scholars disagree, but the heart of Jesus' teaching is undeniable. The fig tree was a marker. Its rebirth was the flashing signal that the countdown had begun. Whether the exact number of years fits our calculations or not, the broader truth stands. The season of his return began the moment Israel stood on its feet again. And here's the fresh angle most overlook. Jesus didn't just use the fig tree to speak of Israel. He framed it as a universal law of recognition. Just as farmers can look at the buds of spring and know that summer is near, so too can believers look at Israel and the worldwide shaking surrounding it, and know the hour is close. Think about it. Since 1948, the world has been in constant upheaval. Wars in the Middle East, conflicts over Jerusalem, global powers aligning and realigning around that tiny strip of land. Why? Because the fig tree is the center of the prophetic timeline. Israel is not just another nation. It is God's timepiece. And Jesus said, when you see these things, not if, but when. It was a guarantee. A prophetic anchor to silence every doubt. So when people mock and say, they've been saying Jesus is coming back for generations, we can point to Israel and say, not every generation saw this. Not every generation lived after the fig tree budded. But we do. This is the proof Jesus left us. A living, breathing sign planted in the soil of history. The fig tree has blossomed. And according to Jesus, that means the end is not far away. It is near, right at the door. When Jesus spoke of his return, he didn't leave us guessing what the world would look like. He gave us two comparisons, the days of Noah and the days of Lot. Two ancient generations that became living parables for the end of the age. The days of Noah. In Noah's time, the earth was filled with violence. Genesis 6 tells us the thoughts of men's hearts were only evil continually. Corruption spread through every level of society. It wasn't just that people sinned, they celebrated it. They lived as though judgment would never come. And while Noah built the ark, the people mocked. While he preached righteousness, they ignored. They ate, they drank, they married, and carried on as if tomorrow was guaranteed. Right up until the day the flood came, and swept them all away. Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Not just in violence, but in blindness. The world will be so consumed with distraction that the trumpet will sound like lightning in a clear sky. Sudden, shocking, undeniable. The days of Lot. But Jesus didn't stop with Noah. He added another example, the days of Lot. Lot lived in Sodom, a city marked by unrestrained immorality. What once was shameful became normal. What once was hidden in darkness was celebrated openly. The people of Sodom had so redefined morality that they could no longer see how close they were to destruction. Even when the angels came to warn Lot, the men of the city surrounded his house, demanding to indulge their sin. Their blindness was so deep, they could not recognize judgment standing at their door. And Jesus said, it was the same in the days of Lot. People were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. But the day Lot left Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just like this on the day the Son of Man is revealed. Look around. Our world mirrors both Noah and Lot. Violence fills the earth, from wars that span nations to crime that stalks our neighborhoods. Corruption seeps into governments, corporations, and even families. We celebrate what God calls sin, and we mock those who preach righteousness. At the same time, morality is not just ignored, but redefined. What God calls holy is called hateful. What he calls sin is labeled as progress. And just as in Sodom, the blindness is so complete that many cannot see the warning signs all around them. Jesus didn't use these stories as distant history lessons. He used them as proof. Proof that when we see a world drowning in violence, corruption, immorality, and indifference, we should know his return is near. The days of Noah and Lot are not coming. They are here. And Jesus said, "So it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." When Jesus described the last days, he used a striking image. He called them the beginning of birth pains. Every mother knows how contractions work. They start faint, spread out, and then they grow sharper, faster, and closer together, until there is no mistaking what's about to happen. Jesus said his return would be the same. The signs would not appear in isolation, scattered across history. They would come like birth pains, waves of upheaval, growing in intensity, converging until the world could no longer ignore what was about to be born. For centuries, wars have scarred the earth. But today, the global landscape is different. Conflicts no longer stay contained. They ripple instantly across borders, through economies, and into every nation's headlines. World War III is not a distant theory anymore. It's a daily fear. When Jesus warned that nations would rise against nations and kingdoms against kingdoms, he wasn't describing an occasional skirmish. He was describing an age where war became the atmosphere of life itself. Jesus also spoke of earthquakes and pestilence. And our generation has witnessed both on a scale unmatched in history. Earthquakes shake cities without warning. Pestilence, once confined to history books, now spreads globally in months. COVID was not the end, but it showed us how quickly the entire world can be shut down by a single plague. Jesus said these were not random. They were contractions, birth pains. Then came his other warning: false prophets will rise, deceiving many. Look at the surge of voices in our world today. Spiritual leaders who preach a Christless gospel, influencers who redefine truth, movements that promise peace but leave people broken. The line between truth and deception has blurred so far. Entire generations no longer know what's real. And that too, Jesus said, would mark the season. In Luke 21, he sharpened the warning. There will be distress of nations with perplexity, people fainting with fear of what is coming on the world. Never before have we seen global anxiety at this scale. Fear is no longer an isolated emotion. It is a global currency. Economic collapse, pandemics, climate crises, political division, all converging at once, driving nations into confusion. And yet, this too was written in advance. Perhaps the most shocking layer of convergence is technological. When John saw the vision of the beast in Revelation 13, he described a system where no one could buy or sell without a mark. For centuries, people mocked. How could such control be possible? But today, technology has caught up with prophecy. Digital currencies, biometric scans, global surveillance, artificial intelligence. The infrastructure for Revelation 13 is no longer fantasy. It's being built in real time. Here's what makes all of this undeniable. It's not just that wars exist, or earthquakes strike, or pestilence spreads. It's that they are all happening at the same time. Jesus' words were precise. He didn't say, when you see a war, or when you see a famine. He said, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Convergence is the master key. One sign may be dismissed. Two may be coincidence. But when every prophetic warning lights up at once, the pattern becomes unmistakable. And so Jesus gave us the command, when you see these things begin to happen, lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. Not when the world fixes itself. Not when things calm down. But when they unravel, when fear grips nations, when deception spreads, when technology races toward control, when Israel stands in the center of the storm, then we are told to look up. Because the convergence is not chaos. It is proof. Proof that the King is at the door. Jesus never intended his followers to live in fear of his return. Instead, he intended them to live in readiness, a constant state of holy anticipation. Imminence, the belief that Christ could come at any moment, is not meant to paralyze us. It is meant to energize us. Think of a bride waiting for her groom. She doesn't know the exact hour of his arrival, but every detail of her life points toward that moment. Every choice, every preparation, every glance in the mirror is made with one thought in mind: he could come today. That is how Jesus calls his church to live. Not with dread, but with joy. Not with fear, but with urgency. The rapture is not an escape hatch for the fearful. It is the fuel for the faithful. When you believe Jesus could return at any moment, it changes the way you live, pulls you out of compromise. It stirs you to holiness. It gives urgency to your prayers, your relationships, your witness to others. You begin to see every conversation as an opportunity to plant eternal seeds. You begin to see every moment as precious, because it could be the last before the trumpet sounds. Believing in imminence does not mean abandoning the world. It means engaging it with greater intensity. Jesus said, "Occupy until I come." In other words, do business for the kingdom until the very last second. Imminence is empowerment. It tells us that time is short, but our purpose is great. That judgment is coming, but so is reward. That while the world mocks and scoffs, the bride is making herself ready. To believe in imminence is to live awake. And in an age where many are spiritually asleep, that is the very proof of who truly belongs to Him. The Bible does not leave us guessing about what happens when the rapture comes. Paul wrote it plainly. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Changed, instantly, gloriously, forever. Every weakness, every sickness, every scar will vanish. We will put on immortality like a garment. And in that moment, death itself will be swallowed up in victory. This is the hope Jesus promised. While the world plunges into chaos, those who belong to Him will be caught up, lifted out of the storm, drawn into His presence. Not to escape responsibility, but to enter reward. The world will look on in confusion. Headlines will scramble for answers. But for the believer, it will be the moment of fulfillment. The groom has come for his bride. The king has come for his people. And this is both judgment and reward. For those who rejected Him, it is loss beyond measure. For those who waited, it is joy unspeakable. Hope realized. Faith made sight. This is what Jesus said would happen next. Not someday, far off in the distance, but in a moment. In the twinkling of an eye. Jesus said this day would come. And now, the proof is before us. The fig tree has blossomed. The days of Noah and Lot are upon us. The signs are converging. The trumpet could sound at any moment. The question is not whether He will return. The question is whether you are ready. Friend, when that moment comes, it will be too late to prepare. There will be no time to bargain, no chance to rethink. In a split second, eternity will be sealed. So the call is urgent. Are you ready to meet Him? Have you surrendered, not just in words, but in heart? Do you live with the expectancy of a bride waiting for her groom? Because when the trumpet sounds, it will be too late to get ready. You must be ready. The time is now.